Good morning or good afternoon or good evening. This is the English teacher Khalid. In this video, we are going to talk about some of the recommended books to English teachers. Now, this video is not for English learners because it has a lot of technicalities and we are talking about the infinitesimal ideas that are related to language teaching, not language learning. Well, I'm talking about language learning, but from the point of view of an English teacher. I always recommend that English teachers have very avid appetite to learn more about the fields of language and language teaching and language learning by exploring their current research. And the current research that we have is pretty much manifested in the kind of book publications. In Iraq, due to copyright, we have access to plethora of sources that are related to language learning and language teaching. So we are actually fortunate. If you travel to the United States or Canada or New Zealand or somewhere in the world, you are not going to have accessibility to the same sources that we have in Iraq. Why? Because there's copyright issues and regulations regarding that. So just to cut it short and nip it in the bud and start from the beginning and avoid beating around the bush, let's talk about the basic books. Let's talk about the basic books that the English teacher needs in order to solidify, galvanize, improvise, develop his language skills in language teaching. You need to always understand that in every year there is a TESOL conference around the world and they discuss the modern techniques and technologies that can be incorporated in language learning. And a few years ago, they started developing kind of sense of how distance learning can be an equal level, if not better, to face-to-face contact. And as you could see here, due to COVID-19 crisis, the flipped classroom and the distance learning and language learning through internet started to take over the face-to-face contact due to contagious diseases that can be transferred through the constant face-to-face contact between the teachers and the students and among themselves. So to cut it short, there are a few sources that you need to build your basic foundation of language philosophy. You need to understand the philosophy of language teaching. And the philosophy of language teaching, to be honest, is not purely linguistic. It's a harmony of psychology, sociology, and language learning. But in addition to that, we have other options and other fields of study that we can incorporate, like corpus linguistics, statistical linguistics, applied linguistic research, ESL and EFL research, and methodology of syllabus design, curriculum design. All of these fields can be incorporated in the encyclopedic knowledge of the teacher in order to be able to deliver successful lesson where the learners can transfer the delivered materials into their brain and then recycle them back, as we could see here, Ferdinand de Saussure, to conversation. So the ultimate goal, the optimal goal of the teacher is to make students and learners speak the language. And in order that to happen successfully and magically, with the spell of the teacher and with the spell of the lesson plan, we need to kind of like walk you through some of the sources that are really quintessentially essential to the teacher in order to be able to understand the philosophy of language teaching and how he delivers that to the students. So the first, probably, by the way, these are my recommended sources. There are so many other sources that may be better, maybe worse, but these are according to my discretions because I've been through all of them and I could see that there's really juicy kind of materials that you can take advantage of in order to teach students. So one of the foundations of linguistics, the modern linguistics, is based on the research of Ferdinand de Saussure in a book called A Course in General Linguistics. Honestly, I took this PDF with copyright, of course, and then I made a photocopy of it and I just started reading it. So this is source number one. You can see here, in case the font of the book is not clear, it's called Course in General Linguistics, and it talks, in a classic kind of English. So probably it's not the modern kind of English that you expect to see in the modern books. It talks about the basic elements of the philosophy of language and how language can be taught, how language can be learned and communicated among people. So this is source number one. Let's come to my favorite source among them. It is by Jeremy Harmer, one of the professors that I had few classes with when I was back in Washington, D.C. in 2016. And this is the copy that he talks about in there. It comes with CD, which is really beautiful. He videos some of the classes and he discusses the elements of successful learning and what the teachers did in the classroom with the students, and then he kind of like materialized that into a lesson plan, and he put it in this book. So the book is called The Practice of English Language Teaching by Jeremy Harmer. I totally recommend you get a copy of it. It's available in Mutanabbi Maktabat Iqra. By the way, this is not promotion to Mutanabbi or Maktabat Iqra. I'm just referring to where you can access this copy of the book. There are other bookstores, not libraries, bookstores that have copies of this book, but I am not aware of where they are. They're not on the top of my mind right now. So the one that I have is the one that I just mentioned. The third option that you may have an access to, if it is available, an introduction to foreign language learning and teaching. It's the second edition by Keith John, and it's pretty much a replica of this, but the kind of language that he uses here is more technical than the one of Jeremy Harmer. But if you are a researcher, if you are a professor, if you're a teacher of English, you definitely will not have any kind of difficulty with that. It's just going to be a piece of cake to you. So, and FYI, a lot of the books that are available currently in the market have a lot of things shared in common. So sometimes you can come across something in chapter 1 of this book. You may come across that thing in chapter 2 or chapter 3, because it's a kind of like circulation among those elite professors who are doing this publication, and it does not necessarily mean that it is different trend. They just reconceptualize what is available in their own terms, and they want to take a little bit of advantage from the financial gains that they do get from the research and from the training that they do conduct. Techniques in testing for people who are interested in or administering classrooms and tests. This is going to be a must source, an introductory must source to you to get a sense of how you can conduct the test. Teaching English to speakers of other languages. It goes through a narrative of some stories that are related to teaching English to other people, to other nationalities. This is going to be very good to you. And my favorite author actually here in this list is David Crystal. He is we have this expression in here, right? It just popped up in my mind. Nar al-alam. How language works. He walks you through the ABCs of language and how language functions and how people globally communicate through English and other languages. It's beautifully made book and accessible to all people, can be easily read without any obstacles, unlike the second teacher education, the Cambridge Guide to Second Teachers Education. That this is going to be a little bit challenging for the intermediate teachers and the beginners of language teaching, because the kind of terminology and the kind of jargon, linguistic jargon that they use in here. But eventually you're going to get a lot of experience from going through the articles, the essays that have been incorporated here. It's a collection, it's a combination of many authors who are sharing their field experience with language teaching and language learning. So ESL, EFL, accessibility to syllabus design, methodology of language teaching, methodology of language learning, all of that can be found here, but the font is a little bit kind of like small, so you need to get a pair of glasses if you're an old-fashioned reader. Classroom management techniques for the beginners who are starting just their career in language teaching. This book is gonna give you a glimpse of the kind of techniques that we use in language and in the classrooms, and how you can incorporate that with big number of students, small number of students, roundtable discussions, debates, presentations. All of that can be found here with a glimpse of the advice from the author here, Jim Scrivener. He's one of my favorite authors, actually. He has another book called, I think, Learning Teaching, or Teaching Learning, Learning Teaching, I think. And it's one of the most delicious books in language teaching. Syllabus design. If you're starting your career as language teacher, you need to have a sense of what syllabus is, how it is different from curriculum design. So you're gonna get through the syllabus design, and the syllabus design walks you through the ABCs of how you can create a lesson plan that is successful to the students. Teaching English to the World, a very good narrative of some stories that are wonderfully made to the people around the world. You're gonna get a big advantage of this book. Last, outstanding assessment for learning in the classroom. Probably this is something that you might not need unless you're a PhD or MA researcher, but I'm throwing on the table in case you haven't access to this copy. Just keep it in your library. You may get in access to it sometime later. It's going to be a very positive thing, or very positive addition to your little or mini library of language teaching and language learning books collection. So just it gives you a sense of how learning in the classroom can be assessed through a variety of techniques, including pre-test, post-test, diagnostic tests, progressive tests, and so on and so forth. So as you could see, the kind of recommended books that I've chosen here are almost related to language teaching. Therefore, they might not be of a big advantage to language learning or to language learners, but they're gonna give you a glimpse of how you can teach language in the correct method using the modern technology and the modern techniques that we have worldwide, that have been adopted in big universities and big institutions and faculties around the world. But these are a very good amount of books that you can start during the lockdown of COVID-19, probably, or the coming months or weeks, if you have free time to access and read and try to incorporate some of the techniques. Final advice to you: read a chapter before you do the classroom teaching, and try to incorporate the recommended methods and recommended advice from this chapter in your classroom. This is how you can convert the theory into practice. Have a wonderful day.